we have some leaks about the Lucasfilm Civil War. We have some leaks about who is going to take Kathleen Kennedy's job when she does finally leave. And we also have some leaks about what went on behind the scenes during the creation of the sequel trilogy, what the directors, what the writers wanted versus what the Disney higher ups and the Lucasfilm higher ups wanted, and who in the end got their way. Let's get into it. So this leak is coming to us from a deleted Reddit user. This one says, I worked on the sequel trilogy for its entire run, The Force Awakens to The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. The world has changed, as has my position in the roots of this tree. In the next coming days, weeks, months, there will be several leaks due to shakeups at Lucasfilm. Leaks have become a part of the culture of the company. I wanted to set some matters straight before that occurred. Who am I? Doesn't matter. There's nothing I can provide to convince everyone who I was without doxing myself, something I'm not particularly open to doing. Take this as gospel or with a grain of salt. So I think the real way that we can know if this Reddit leak is true is if what he said earlier eventually becomes true. When he said in the next coming days, weeks, months, there will be several leaks due to shakeups at Lucasfilm. So if we do see more leaks, if we do see some shakeups at Lucasfilm, then we know that this might have some truth to it. Let's get into the Civil War part of this Reddit leak. This leak says there has never been a cultural war at Lucasfilm. Nevertheless, a disagreement on what direction to take the franchise has always been a recurring problem. So I feel like every time the word Civil War is mentioned, especially whenever I mention it, people think it's actually Kathleen Kennedy versus Jon Favreau with lightsabers and blasters. It's not an actual war that's happening at Lucasfilm. I know this. Everyone who talks about the Civil War knows this. But what we mean is literally what he said in that second sentence. Nevertheless, a disagreement on what direction to take the franchise has always been a recurring problem. What we're saying is that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni obviously have a different philosophy from the faction of Kathleen Kennedy. It's obvious that Kathleen Kennedy is behind stuff like the High Republic, who don't focus on storytelling, who focus on pushing that agenda. And then you have Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni's faction who only focus on storytelling. That's what we're saying. I've always said Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni don't seem like the power-grabbing types to me. They're just off creating greatness. I don't think that Jon Favreau is actively trying to take Kathleen Kennedy's job, but I do think there's a faction at Lucasfilm that think Kathleen Kennedy isn't right for the job. But mostly I just think there's two separate factions who have two different philosophies on the way that Star Wars should be run. And if this leak is true, that's kind of confirmed. Certain members of the Lucasfilm story group, Pablo Hidalgo, desired to see Star Wars resemble a D&D campaign, more aesthetic, less narrative. Literally what I just said. Pablo Hidalgo is on the Kathleen Kennedy side of the Civil War. More aesthetic and less narrative is a weird way to put it, but it does make a little bit of sense. They want it to look like Star Wars without actually feeling like Star Wars. They want it to look like Star Wars while also pushing that agenda in there and not telling us a good story. They give us the Force, they give us lightsabers, they give us blasters and stormtroopers, but they don't tell us a good story. They make it look like Star Wars on the surface and then push that agenda more than the storytelling. Others, Favreau and Filoni, are push for a more traditional approach. That's all that me and others have been saying. Favreau and Filoni want to continue the tradition of Star Wars. They want to tell a good Star Wars story. And I'm sure they do care about the aesthetics. They want it to look like Star Wars as well, but that's not as important as feeling like Star Wars. That's not as important as telling a good story. There isn't some war between Kathy and Favreau. They're on rather pleasant terms. Kathy seems to want him to take over once she retires / is promoted. Now, this I have a hard time believing. I don't think that Jon Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy could possibly be on good terms right now. I think they did start out on pleasant terms. Whenever Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni were brought on to make The Mandalorian, the first meeting that them and Kathleen Kennedy had were at Kathleen Kennedy's house, and apparently they became pretty good friends. But after all the intrusion on the storytelling for Favreau's universe, that alone had to make him a little bit upset. Then after the firing of Gina Carano, there is no way that Jon Favreau was happy with that decision. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe Jon Favreau didn't care about Gina Carano at all, but I don't think so. I don't think Jon Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy are on pleasant terms at all. But I also think they're both professionals and they'll make it look like they're on pleasant terms, not only to each other, but definitely to all the other employees that are working at Lucasfilm. They're not going to make it known that they don't like each other, especially Jon Favreau. He doesn't want any trouble. He doesn't want any drama. He's not going to let everyone else know that he doesn't like Kathleen Kennedy, but there's absolutely no way that he's extremely happy with the way that she's running things right now. There's just no way. Filoni isn't interested, nor is he even remotely qualified to run a film studio. He's much happier working on his own stories. If the leak is true, I love this part of the leak because I don't think Filoni would be a good studio head at all. Like it said, he's not even remotely qualified. Favreau is extremely qualified and he knows his Star Wars. So that's why I think he would be a good studio head, but I also feel like he would feel the same way as Filoni and that he wants to focus on telling stories, not really worry about being the president of a studio. But I do think Favreau is the best choice as of now. Now we get into the sequel trilogy part of the leaks, and this is actually pretty revealing for if these leaks are true or not, if I really believe these leaks, because they do seem pretty sympathetic towards J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy. So I think this leak might have come from the J.J. Abrams camp. And we all know that Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams are good friends. Kathy loves J.J. Abrams initially had hoped to work with George. That didn't work out. When George walked, J.J. had almost attempted the same. Iger stopped him. I kind of call BS on that one. I don't think J.J. Abrams wanted to work with George at all. J.J. Abrams absolutely hated the prequel trilogy, and that was 100% George's vision. And you know how big J.J. Abrams' ego is. He doesn't want anyone else's input. I don't think he wanted George involved at all with that. Finn had likewise been a subject of controversy. Abrams wanted John Boyega to play Finn. Alan Horn, as well as additional Disney producers, saw that as a further risk. Horn pushing for an Ansel Elgort type. Finn being a Jedi was also something Disney Disney producers thought was too much if John Boyega was cast. Abrams was forced to water down that subplot in The Force Awakens. Horn was the most vocal against the romance between Finn and Rey, risk factor playing a big part. Once again, more extremely pro JJ leaks, and just stuff that I call BS on. Finn being a Jedi was also something Disney producers thought was too much, so pretty much they're just calling Alan Horn racist, saying that Alan Horn didn't want a black guy playing Finn. That's what they're trying to insinuate here, and I call BS. I think it was the opposite. I think JJ wanted someone else to play Finn, but Disney wanted a black guy so bad so that they could virtue signal on Twitter and Instagram, and so they could market him as being important to look woke. I think that's way more likely. Horn was the most vocal against the romance between Finn and Rey, risk factor playing a big part. They're pretty much just calling Alan Horn racist, and while he very well may be, I don't know, I just don't think he was actively against Finn being a black guy, and I really don't think that he didn't want Finn and Rey to be in a relationship because of that reason, but that's just me. Let me know what you think in the comments. Abrams would eventually ask to set up a romance between Poe and Finn when Disney requested him not to go forward with Finn and Rey, which had been refused as well. Lucasfilm asked Abrams to set up a romance between Poe and Rey. Abrams refused. All of this is just seeming way too pro JJ Abrams, and later on in the video it gets a little bit pro Kathleen Kennedy. This is the type of stuff that makes me think the leak isn't true. Abrams had pitched a two-part film. Part 1 to cover the aftermath of The Last Jedi and establish his narrative. Part 2 as the closure. Disney said no clearly. I don't think that's very clear. I think that's literally what The Rise of Skywalker is. When I first saw the movie, my first thought was that the first half of that movie undid The Last Jedi, and they tried to fit an entire movie into the second half of that movie. I think that was the main problem with The Rise of Skywalker. Rose had a key role in saving the day by No One Cares. Rey had learned that she was Vader's granddaughter and reconciled her past with Luke. Finn had staged a stormtrooper rebellion after finding a long-lost sibling. Rey was Vader's granddaughter? But did Luke just have sex with a random rebel? I don't think that's true, and I really don't like that. Unless they mean that she was another Han Solo and Leia baby, which I really don't think that's what they're trying to say. I don't like that at all. Disney and Lucasfilm disagreed with Abrams' finale, felt that it needed a villain with a bigger audience presence than Kylo or Hux, expressing regret that Snoke had been killed off, but not wanting to bring him back. Wait, so they think Snoke had a bigger audience presence than Kylo? Kylo would have been a great big bad. Abrams had faith that Adam Driver and Domhnall Gleeson would be more than enough and that both men could turn in a grand performance. Disney didn't want to hear it. They pushed Palpatine onto Kathy, who was forced to push him onto Abrams. And there's the pro Kathleen Kennedy part. They're saying that the Disney overlords pushed ideas onto Kathleen Kennedy, who then had to push it onto her creatives. And I just don't think that's the case. Maybe every once in a while, but I just don't think those Disney executives, those Disney higher-ups really care that much about the Star Wars storytelling. Abrams played ball with Palpatine, yet every week on production there were new notes from Disney or Lucasfilm. Eventually Abrams shot 2 movies, his vision and Disney/Lucasfilms. I'll give you a guess on which one got a theatrical release. It wasn't the one with Matt Smith, and that kind of takes the credibility out of it a bit for me, because this just seems like it was leaked by someone from JJ Abrams' camp. Eventually Abrams shot 2 movies, his vision and Disney/Lucasfilms. I don't believe that for a second. When did he have time to shoot 2 different movies? There was only 2 years between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker releasing, and at first Colin Trevorrow was going to make episode 9, so JJ Abrams didn't even have a full 2 years, and he shot 2 different movies? With all this drama going on, with all those rewrites going on, he had time to shoot 2 movies? I don't think so. Is there a JJ cut? The answer is yes and no. There was an assembly cut of what Abrams filmed before reshoots took place. It resembles his original vision. It needs some work and likely some reshoots. Only a lunatic would attempt to fund it though. So like I said, I feel like this is an extremely pro JJ Abrams leak, but let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think this leak is real? And also let me know if you like or dislike these leaks, especially the part about the Civil War. Do you think there's really no Civil War at Lucasfilm? And do you think Kathleen Kennedy actually wants Jon Favreau to take over her job? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to follow me on Twitter or join the Discord, both of those links will be in the description as well. But thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.